Welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. We're back in Chicago and the Never Never. In other words, it's Dresden Files, specifically Grave Peril. This is book 3 of the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. I will put a link in the description below to my reviews of Stormfront and Full Moon. I want to start right off here with some praise for Grave Peril. The opening chapter, the first 7 pages of this book are some of the best I've ever seen from Jim Butcher. I absolutely loved the opening of Grave Peril. It is full of just the best things about this series as I see it so far. It has the action, it has the humor, it has the somewhat controlled chaos, and I just love the dynamic between Harry and Michael. And that final line of that first chapter is just the most perfectly delivered line in the entire book, maybe in the series so far. Just brilliant stuff. And just, this is what I love about Dresden Files. It's the entertainment factor, and it's done very well for the most part. I also, by the way, speaking of Michael, I loved this new character. He is a perfect foil for Harry. The two of them, the relationship between the two of them, the dialogue between them two, I liked Michael right away, right off the bat, as soon as I saw him. He actually reminded me of a guy I went to high school with. The guy was just, he was perfect, you know? Nobody should be that perfect. He was athletic, and he was good looking in a rugged kind of way, and he was just, you know, and so damn nice. You had to like the guy. That's Michael. He's just that kind of person. And as I said, he's a great foil for Harry with all his flaws. Harry's still lovable, of course, but just so flawed. And the contrast between the two comes up often in the book. For example, the fact that Michael is a family man and a very successful one at that, with a very warm home. Contrast that to what Harry has, his somewhat disastrous love life, let's say. So yeah, I mean, but the two of them just have this great rapport that I really appreciated, had a lot of fun with that. Another relationship in this book that I enjoyed seeing evolve was that between Harry and Susan. And I don't know where this is going exactly, especially given what happens in Grave Peril. But I just love what Butcher is doing, and they have a mature, growing, as I characterized it before, as kind of a slow dance, and they're trying to figure it out, especially given Harry's very weighted past. I think there's a lot of reluctance on his part to get involved, frankly, because of the dangers that surround him and other factors, and he's been scarred here, that's evident. But what's happening with Susan in here, and I like the character as well, Susan. She's really well done. I love how relentless she is and independent and how caring, and that some of the gestures that she has for Harry are very touching. So yeah, I'm a fan of that. I also like, from the previous books, the relationship that Harry has with Karen Murphy. That's another good one in here. The relationships with the main character are really often what sell a book and a series. And these are 2 of my favorites so far. Karen Murphy is a great character. She does not really have much of a role in Grave Peril, frankly. She does make an appearance, if you will, and it's enough for me to keep my interest in that character going, but she really isn't there for much, kind of out of the action, so to speak. I'm not a fan, however, and this is my one, I guess you could say, criticism so far, and I don't want to repeat it too much. I hope I won't have to in the future. It is something that I talked about with the first 2 books. I'm not a fan of what we have here, what Butcher does with Lydia and Justine. These are characters who, it seems to me anyway, are just clearly introduced in a very superficial way in order to be literally and metaphorically undressed. And to me, it's a little gross, honestly. There's a point in there where Harry has a brief fantasy about Justine being dressed in a plaid skirt and whatever else a schoolgirl is supposed to dress in. And just to me, you know, a 30-year-old man having a sexual schoolgirl fantasy isn't funny. And I think it was there maybe for the laughs. It didn't work for me, frankly. I find it more gross and pathetic than anything else. So that part of it I did not enjoy, and it's something I'm afraid it's going to come up again in this series. It certainly was an issue for me in the first couple books. There's enough that's great about this series so far that I've been willing to keep going. But that's just part of this that I'm going to have to put up with if I continue with the series. And I do want to continue with the series. So there it is. Another part of this, obviously, is the vampires. We get to see a lot more of the vampires in this one, including Bianca and the Red Court. I now feel like I have some understanding of what we have here in the vampire world here. And then there's the White Court, and the representative of that is introduced here is Thomas. And I'm not sure exactly what. I mean, I kind of like his character, but the whole concept of sex vampires, I'm not sure I'm going to be really a big fan of this. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah. And then you have the Black Court represented by Mavra. And these are the most, I guess, magical of the vampires. So it could be interesting to see how this develops, the differences between the various vampire courts and their rivalries, and how Harry gets mixed up in that. So we'll see where that goes. And speaking of Harry, I continue to love this character for the most part, except for the occasional weird ickiness about younger women. But for the most part, I find a very sympathetic character. And we learn a little bit more about his background. It's kind of interesting, the relationship, this is new, that he has with the Fae, specifically Leia, and Harry's godmother. So it's an interesting look into Harry's past. Again, a little bit of information about Harry's mother that has me very intrigued. A bit about his father too, but I'm more interested in the mother at this point. She seems to be the key player here. So we'll see where that goes. And the parts with Leia also give us a little bit more of a glimpse into the Never Never. And this is, I think it's something that's going to be gradually, we're getting more and more of. And I had a lot of fun with that part. So I can't wait to see more of that and how the rules work and all of that. So I did have a good time with that part of the book as well. And so the other thing I want to comment on is something from my last video I made on the Dresden Files, my review of Full Moon. I had a very interesting comment from my friend A.P. Canavan, who has the channel A Critical Dragon, which I'm sure you've heard me talk about, but I would certainly urge you to check out A Critical Dragon. Wonderful channel. He is also a reader of the Dresden Files, and he had a very interesting comment about the plot structure. So I'm going to raise that here. And I hope that AP, if you're watching this, I hope you make your own videos about this series too, because I'm sure it would be fun to watch your take. But I'm going to steal your point that you made on the plot structure. And it was very interesting. And so it's a bit of a critique, but it's also interesting to see how this series works. And it's something that AP said about the tripartite plot structure of this series, which is especially evident in the early books. I think he said something like the first 12 books or so. You can see it at work, but especially in the earlier books. And so what he means by a tripartite plot structure is there are essentially 3 threads. And there is an almost standard resolution pattern, I believe that's the way he put it, that where these 3 threads, you have Act 1 in the book, where you have the main plot A introduced right away, and then you also have the subplot B introduced. And then in Act 2 of the book, you have subplot C introduced, and there is a reveal that 2 of the plots are actually interconnected. And then you have the third act, which folds plots B and C into plot A, which is resolved through some massive confrontation. Sound familiar? So I'm not going to go into detail here in terms of Grave Peril, but I will say you have the ghosts, you have the vampires, and you have Kravos. So far, AP, I see what you mean. And you just had to be right about this, didn't you? Well, I don't think it ruins the books at all for me to have this put in front of me. And now that I've read 3 of them, I can definitely see this tripartite plot structure. I think that is a great critique, if you will. It doesn't ruin the series. This is entertainment, and the fact that it is formulaic is fitting, I think. There are a lot of deliberate nods in here, obviously, to noir, detective fiction, and mystery novels, and you have the horror element, and you have, of course, the fantasy in here. So a lot of this is kind of makes fun of itself, and I get that. And even the kind of icky parts where Harry's a little bit of the male gaze thing gets its origins perhaps from the detective fiction and whatnot. It doesn't mean you still need to have it. There are things that about the past we don't need to keep doing. Like mullets were a thing in the 80s. We don't have those anymore. So regardless, I think that this is mostly a very entertaining and fun series, and I'm going to continue with it. It's a nice break from the bigger, heavier, epic fantasy that is really my favorite thing to read. And I really do enjoy the energy that Jim Butcher brings to these books. So I am going to continue with this series with a keen interest in seeing what happens with Harry and his character and the Never Never and the mystery behind him. And I still hope that there will be some more maybe thematic depth as the series continues. So I'd love to have your take on that if you are a fan of the Dresden Files. I hope to see you soon in my next video, which I have a very fun thing planned. So I do hope you will join me for that. Until next time.